When you start becoming more carb conscious, there are fluctuations that happen in our bodies. And the main fluctuations happen with electrolytes. And so we went to the lab and we formulated PLEX to have these electrolytes in the exact amounts and the exact forms to help replenish that process.
We have to be able to produce and utilize ketones, right? So we promote endogenous production of ketones and the ability to use exogenous ketones. And the way to do that is to optimize the internal machinery that you have in order to create energy in the mitochondria. It's very important when we talk about utilizing ketones to be able to address this issue. If you deplete carbohydrates from the muscle, it forces you to have to work off fat as fuel. And that's what interval training and circuit training does. That's what intermittent fasting does. When you deplete yourself of carbohydrate, you have to rely on mitochondria to produce energy. So when we actually went and made this formula, we had to have an understanding of like, how is new mitochondria formed? Because that's what we need to target. DNA is a blueprint for you. When we're doing this 24-hour system, we're trying to optimize that blueprint. Mitochondria is very difficult because there's DNA inside of the cells, in the center of the cells, the nucleus, but there's also DNA in the mitochondria. But you have to somehow coordinate the two to make new mitochondria. So it's a very difficult process, and we're making this formula like, well, what's the best way to target that? Well, it turns out that you almost have a switchboard. Okay, think of it as like a switchboard. And there's a master regulator of this switchboard that can coordinate or orchestrate both the DNA in the mitochondria and the DNA inside of the nucleus. And that switchboard is called PGC1 alpha. MitoPTQ technology actually switches on the master regulator to turn on mitochondria. So that's why we call them upgraded electrolytes. It's not just things like potassium, they're bound and specific compounds like with bicarbonate, which is a specific buffer. Think about like when you're training hard and you get that burning sensation, bicarbonate's a buffer. And it goes down oftentimes on keto.
We have unique forms of magnesium, things to help with like muscle cramps, things to help with sleep, right? Magnesium helps with all these things. De-stressing, right? That's where magnesium fits in. And we have things like vitamin C and vitamin D. Over 95% of the world are deficient in vitamin D. And one of my favorite things, which is creatine, right? Sounds basic, but what creatine does is not only help support muscle tissue, but it actually helps support the brain.
Ideally, you're taking it 3 times a day. And on top of that, you're targeting the mitochondria all 3 times of those days. That way you can increase fat metabolism. That way you can increase the ability to use fuel.